welcome to the Hoops Rehab Show on a Sunday night. I'm sorry, a Monday night because it's Memorial Day. So happy Memorial Day, everybody. How you doing, Eric?
Doing pretty good, man. It was a nice long weekend. I know we obviously didn't jump on the last couple of nights, but it was enjoyable for sure. And these series have got some good games this weekend too to watch, and so things are good. How was your night and your weekend?
Yeah, the weekend was great. I was out of town, so tried to jump on Friday night, and Saturday and Sunday was a little bit busy. But we had two games on Sunday and today that were thrillers, so we're going to go over those two. But as always, everybody, I am the game injury doc, aka Dr. Evan Jeffries, and on my right is Eric B. Mack. We can be found at those handles on all platforms. We also have the Hoops Rehab Show YouTube page, so please follow, subscribe, and share that page with anybody that you think would love some hoops talk. And then we also have the Apple and Spotify podcasts available, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's the Hoop Rehab Show. Please follow, rate, comment. That'd be greatly appreciated. And so we can continue this journey and get everything talked about. So, Eric, we had 2 days of thrilling games here.
Yeah.
So we'll start, obviously, with OKC and Minnesota, which was a big pivotal game for. What were your thoughts kind of going into the game and what you saw with the game?
Well, it's definitely the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, game. I know often we talk about those unsung heroes, those others, but when you get to this point of the season, it's just your stars got to come out and play. And to be quite frank, one did on one side and one just wasn't all there for whatever reason. But yeah, man, it was a great game, back and forth. Thunder kind of held the small cushion there, but definitely got probably a little bit nervous time in OKC at the end of the game with obviously playing the foul game and all that. And so, from game 3, once I saw that Minnesota just destroyed them, I knew that today was going to be a lot different. We know how it is in the playoffs. Like, you can lose by 30, 40, 50 by 1. It really, to be honest, doesn't have an effect on the next game, which is pretty crazy. Momentum is a thing, but you almost could imagine OKC probably just said, screw it, forget about game 3. Let's do what we do. And handle business in game 4.
Yeah, that's for sure. To get kind of blown out like that, it really shows the character of your team, what you do the next game. And absolutely. OKC came out for sure determined to win this game. And Minnesota was right there down the stretch, right? They were in it throughout the game. You just kind of felt that based on the way OKC was playing, that they had control of the game. And when you got your superstar, I don't want to hate on this guy, but when you take 2 shots in the first half and make 1, you're not going to win a game. And I'm talking about Anthony Edwards, the Ant-Man. You got to have more than that. I saw Stephen A at halftime. He's screaming at the top of his lungs, I need more, I need more. But the reality is, Lu Dort was in his ass all night, just face guarding him. He wouldn't let him move. If it wasn't Lu Dort, it was Alex Caruso. If it wasn't Alex Caruso, it was Jalen Williams, and so on and so on. OKC's defense is as legit as they get, and that's why they look like the heavy favorites to win the finals.
Yeah, they do. And they have an enforcer, they got a couple enforcers, but Dort to me is like a true, throw out the numbers. Obviously, if you can get some open threes from him, that's a plus. But it's tough when you have to have your superstar do both. Now, SGA is a solid defender as well, and there's guys that do both. But you need their offense. So when you have somebody in the ass of Anthony Edwards, and we've been talking about OKC all year, how they, or at least towards the end of the year, how they play defense and they don't give up anything easy. And you're probably thinking 128, 126, how doesn't seem like there was any defense, but when they needed to get a stop, when they needed to kind of establish their pace and brand of basketball. It was guys like Lu Dort just not making it easy for Edwards. And believe me, I'm a big Anthony, Edwards fan. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's still really pretty young and not even in his prime yet. And he's still, I'm hoping last season in the Western Finals and this season in the Western Finals, he kind of learns a thing or two. But no matter who's guarding you, like guys like that, you just gotta, because you're just like, it's not so much like the points. It's just like, you're just so much, your team is so much better when you're aggressive and you're putting up shots. And it's not, we're not saying put, shots up that are unwarranted and bad shots, but I guarantee you he could have had more than 2 good shots in that first half. And so, yeah, man, it's going to be tough sledding for Minnesota going forward. But really, it was just like you were kind of saying, OKC, it got real close at the end, but you kind of felt like it was in their hands throughout the game. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's for sure. And, we go back to the shots, right? And when you're a scorer in this league, you got to take the shots. And SGA shot 30 times, right? So you knew he was going to get buckets. He shot 30 times and was 12 or 14 from the free throw line. So that's as aggressive as you can get in a game. And he had 40, right? And that's what superstars do. And if you're really trying to win a championship, essentially you have to do that. And when you look at Minnesota, you had Anthony Edwards, right? With, he's 5 for 13, 16 points. And I don't know what to say about Julius Randle, because he's had games in this playoffs that he's, looked like a Robin to the Batman of the Ant-Man, right? And then he's had 2 duds in these games where he had like 5 and 6 points. And tonight was one of those, right? He had 5 points and 5 turnovers. Again, 5 points, 5 turnovers. I mean, there's not many times where you see usually it's like an assist to turnover ratio. That was a 1-to-1 with points and turnovers, right? So you can't have a game like that if you're supposed to win and tie up the series at 2-2. Just unacceptable by Randle, and I'm sure he feels the same way about it as well. And when you look at it combined between Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, that's 10 turnovers because Ant had 5 as well. So you're not going to win many games when you have your 2 superstars getting that many turnovers, and overall as a team they had 21. So it was a tough, even though, like you said, they look at the box score, 128, 126, not a really big defensive game. But OKC, with the way they swarm and their hands are everywhere, they force a lot of mistakes, and that's what Minnesota made tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they both shot about little over 50%. Thunder shot 11 more shots, and so they got some. That's probably because of the turnovers as well as offensive rebounds, and they just were. There was, like we were saying, there was obviously Minnesota was in it, and going back to Randle, I mean, he's having one of those playoffs where it's like, sure, probably in 3 or 4 years, you can kind of sit back and say, man, Julius Randle had a hell of a 2024-25 campaign in the playoffs, but when you're in the Western Conference Finals, your performance is so magnified. Sure, they probably wouldn't have been where they are without him, but you got to finish a job. And so far, 2 out of the 4 games have been duds, as you said. And I think I mentioned it maybe last show or the show before, where you obviously can, there's guys that just have real solid playoff runs, and you can't look too much more into it than hey, he's just having a good 6 weeks or month or what have you. And so maybe that's, I hope not. Hopefully Randle can have an amazing game 5 and push the series, but I feel like that might be the case with Julius, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. He's kind of been that his career. So it's not surprising that he has ups and downs, right? He's never he's had a couple seasons, obviously, with the Knicks where you're just like, man, that dude is, elite, all-star, all-NBA type of player. But he hasn't been able to put that together consistently in the playoffs, and that's where it matters the most, right? So until that's the case, it's hard to kind of put him up there with the upper echelon of players, just because when you have a game that you have 5 points, it's just in a game 4 that matters. It's just not the type of performance you need from a quote unquote star or superstar of your team, right? So he is what he is, right? He's a great player, and there's times where he looks like he's pretty dominant, but he's always struggled with his right hand, right? Everybody knows that. And so it's kind of a lot of teams know how to play him and how to shade him to certain directions, and I think that affects him during the game when it happens.
Yeah, I mean they're facing a juggernaut on defense like OKC. We talked about their first 2 rounds. I mean Warriors are pretty decent defensively, but they're nothing compared to what the Thunder are. And so like during a regular season, it's a bigger sample size compared to the playoffs. So like for example, it's like they played 5 against the Lakers, 5 against the Warriors. So that's 10 games. So I'm sure like in a regular season, you could have a 10-game stretch where you look kind of like how he has. But as like, I guess what I'm trying to say is now it's like he's played 14 games in the playoffs. So you're going to get more back to like the means, kind of like what his averages are. And so that being said, though, it's just, they got to win. We've got to win a game, obviously game 5. I mean, it could be over, but I think they're going to need to get more of like what we saw games 1 through 10 from him if they want to have any shot. Because Thunder are on a mission right now, and so and then Edwards too. Like let's not like we just mentioned, Edwards is going to have to come up big as well.
100%. And before we kind of keep going on this, as always, everybody, please comment if you're in the YouTube, if you're in the Twitter, you're in the Instagram live, please comment, and we'll kind of get to those comments throughout the show. We love to make it an interactive show when we're live like this. So let us know. First one, our man Cam Miller. What up, Doc? What up, Cam? Hope Florida, if you're still out there, is treating you well. But I mean, we haven't even touched this yet, but I want to talk about the other 2, or I would say part of the big 3 on OKC.
Yep.
Jalen Williams had a hell of a game, and you just needed one of those games out of somebody like that. And he had 34, right? I mean, that's a huge game out of him. You know what you're going to get out of SGA, but sometimes you don't know what you're going to get out of Jalen Williams and Chet. And tonight, those 2 just stepped up big time. I mean, I felt like he was making 3, especially in the first quarter. He was hitting 3s. He was in the open shot, playing great on defense, athletic, rebounding the ball, right? And then when you look at the other guy, Chet, he is so big at times where it's like he's able to get some offensive rebounds. He can hit the 3 if he needs to. He had a couple moves on Gobert that he just would pump fake the 3, spin on him, and can get to the basket, or more of a give and go, give it up, cut to the basket, and he's past Gobert. So he was an example of having your superstars back. And those 2 players had their superstars back tonight. And that team is so connected. Like team chemistry is probably as good as I've ever seen it, or compared to like a Warriors team, which we'll kind of get into in a little bit. But man, they are just super connected. You could tell by the interviews. What'd you see with all that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously winning is fun, and they've had a lot of success the last couple seasons. And I'm pretty sure you guys have all seen how they do their post-game interviews, where all of them are there, not just the one guy that we customarily see. And so, that kind of does show me something. You obviously have to have the talent to go with it, but they're just like, you could tell they love each other, love playing with each other. I want to say a couple of games ago, I think we were on Jalen Williams a little bit, kind of like, hey, you're the all-star, right? You're that number 2 guy. We got to see a little bit more out of you, I think, in the Denver series. And we've definitely seen that. We talked about SGA MVP. He didn't have a highly efficient night, as you spoke of. Still got his 40, but he needed a couple other folks to join the party. And I think this was definitely Chet's, probably his best game of the playoffs, to be honest with you, because there were some games where I kind of, if Thunder were not going to win this championship, and they obviously still got a ways to go, but I was going to kind of say like, hey, I think for them to win it, I think he's the one that has to take that next step. And he'll still will need for them to be, maybe kind of go for a run here, which I know we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, those two were crucial, man. They are, I mean, even on one thing about Jalen Williams is he defends the hell out of the ball too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. All of them do. And especially him. So even those nights that he wasn't having that great of a game, on one end, he was definitely putting in the effort on the other. And so, I mean, let's be honest. You got Caruso coming in, like you mentioned earlier, Dort. I mean, they're deep. They were number 1 seed for a reason, and right now they're just firing on all cylinders, and they're just fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I would say with Chet, man, you look at the stats and you're like 21-7, right? Decent game, man. That was
Yep.
The stats definitely lie in terms of if you were to watch footage of this game, because Chet was all over the place in this game. I mean, probably the most
3 blocks,
athletic quickness, like being able to recover for blocks and just being able to drop when Ant would kind of drive and they would kind of close off the paint, along with Hartenstein when he was in there. I mean, I just thought he did a tremendous job with defense, like overall, and then just and then on offense, just spacing the floor, right? I mean, SGA had what? He had the 40 points, but he also had 10 assists, right? So those guys made big shots, like the Isaiah Joes of the world, right? The Carson Wallaces of the world. Cason Wallace, sorry. They all made threes or open shots, right, when they were past the ball. So they overall, the whole team just played like they should and showing why they're the number 1 seed. And to me, it's going to take some huge performances by, I don't know. I wouldn't say count Minnesota out right now at this point, but it's going to take a monster performance by Ant and Julius Randle to even have a chance in Game 5. Yeah. And then even if they get back to Minnesota, I just don't think this team is losing 3 in a row at this point. No. And then when you look at the finals, I don't know if a team on the East Coast could beat them 4 times. Like, it just looks like it's going to be very, very hard. I want to say it's going to be a competitive series wherever it happens, but they are so talented and it's cool to watch, man.
Yeah, they're hey, look, you play whoever's in front of you. I know there's times where you, like, I don't know. I mean, it would have been cool to see, like, for example, Boston and OKC, like former champ and obviously potentially present champ. But hey, I mean, that's how it goes sometimes. And I mean, OKC, it would be definitely a disappointment if they don't win it. Obviously, barring any injuries, they're big favorites. They're big favorites in this series, being up 3-1, and then no matter who they play on the other side, I just think it's theirs to lose, like by a wide margin.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to get into a little topic here, and I know it's kind of jumping ahead, right? I know OKC has not won anything yet. They haven't even made the finals. But to me, they remind me of the Golden State Warriors from before they won a championship. You know, Harrison Barnes, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson Warriors, where you're like, man, this team is good. They're finally getting over the hump, and they finally win a championship, right? And then they become a dynasty that they are. They added KD, won some more, and then they won another one without KD, right? So I don't know, but to me, the Thunder seem as close as it gets to like a Warriors dynasty. What do you say?
I think so. I mean, look, like, I think there's times that we say that, like, so for example, there's been 7 new champions the last 7 years. This team's a little bit more on the unique side. Like, for example, Lakers winning it, Milwaukee winning it. I mean, we kind of thought, obviously, with Boston, right? They're just, what could happen? They're injury away from it not going down. But, another thing is, like, when you win, people start wanting to get paid. That's just part of the process. And we know today's NBA, it's tough to keep everyone happy, especially a small market team like them. However, they're young. They play defense. That's not going to ever go away. And to be honest, they have a lot of resources in terms of, like, draft picks still. Like I said, the cap is going to be probably an issue for them. Maybe not next year, but the year after. You could see like either like a Chet or like a Williams maybe or something being dealt like later on. SGA is not going anywhere, but it's just how I would say that's the only thing. And then I also like don't want to discredit those teams that like have had dynasties or won 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah,
it's definitely a big challenge. But hey, if there was a team that's like textbook, like kind of like the Warriors, like the Lakers, where man, they're going to be in the mix for the next 5 years. And when you're in the mix for 5 years and you got the talent they have, you got to expect them to at least win a couple, right? And so, I mean, got to get this one first, and then we'll see from there. But what are your thoughts? Do you see it? I mean, it sounds like you're kind of thinking it's possible, but obviously there's some factors there.
SGA is 26.
Yeah,
he's arguably a top 5 player in this league. He just won the MVP, and more than likely they're going to win the finals. Yep. So that right there alone is, and you're locked into him. You're not getting rid of him. That guy is there. You're not going to do anything to get rid of him, right? He's like one of those untradeable players, I would say, at this point.
Right.
Then you look at, you got on the other side, you got Jalen Williams, who's 22, 23, Chet, 22, 23. Yes, you're going to have to pay these guys. Like, that's understandable. But they have a player like they drafted this year, Nikola Topic, right? He was a huge kind of foreign like draft pick, but they knew he was going to be out with the ACL injury for the whole year, right? And it's like you're going to have players kind of coming in the farm system just like that. So I think they're just deep, and they have I couldn't count how many picks they have right now, but I imagine they have a ton of picks still from all those trades that they made. So even if they wanted to keep this core strong together, they can try to pay, and if they can't essentially pay all these guys, they can trade a couple of them with picks to get a superstar to play along with SGA. So I just feel like no matter what you do with this team, you can reinvent the wheel if you don't keep it all young like the way they are. I would say, like, if they won this year, more than likely you bring everybody back to try to win it next year. Barring injury, they'll be a favorite. And then at that point, you either have to pay everybody or trade one of them and maybe add another player or two, and then along with the draft picks that you already have. And it's just like, to me, it just seems like there's going to be a never-ending cycle. I know the NBA, it happens, and it looks like it's going to be perfect for a while, and then something happens, right? Like, I mean, we look at OKC has actually been this team before. Harden, Durant, Westbrook.
Yeah, right? They keep them right. Yeah,
they got to the finals, and they weren't willing to pay James Harden 4 years, $60 million. Was it?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. 60, I mean, obviously, it's all like relative,
at the time,
but yeah, it wasn't
right?
Wasn't a huge number. I mean,
yeah, but they weren't able to do that then, right? So I mean, there's precedent and stuff like that happens, but to me, I could see them for sure winning this year, and then you rolling back with the same team, and it's hard to see anybody stopping them at this point.
Yeah, then they're Sam Presti. He's made some real good decisions, and so with all these draft picks they still got, that they're gonna make some. Not all of them are gonna be a bullseye, but there's gonna be some players that we don't even know yet. Like you just mentioned, one obviously that is gonna come through the farm, as you said, and so where they may not be able to keep everyone ultimately. I mean, they'll be there next year for sure, but they'll probably have someone coming up. And so, I mean, what they did is they obviously went through years of not playing very well. And they got fortunate to have somebody like Paul George, which they traded.
Yeah.
And then it's just so happened to land. I mean, even though they probably were excited to get SGA, but they probably couldn't have ever have thought that he was going to be this type of player. And so you got to get a little lucky sometimes. It's better to be lucky than good often. And so, yeah, man, if they finish this off, which I believe they will, it's going to be, how are we going to play with OKC now? So before it was like, we got to build a team to beat like a Denver or a Boston. Now it's like, we got to build a team. We got to be deep. We got to be athletic to compete with the likes of the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like, how do you build the dynasty? And Sam Presti went all through all those years of losing, right?
Yep.
How did these players? Obviously, nobody knew what SGA was going to be like. But you saw potential. You just didn't know what that was going to look like. And now they're here, and you seem like you have the right coach, right? He knows what he's doing, obviously, and they're pretty much here to stay, and that's scary for the rest of the league at this point.
Yeah, I would just say, we'll see what a certain team does to build around Luka, and we'll see how, So I say OKC winning the next 2 out of 3, and is going to win the other one. So
yeah. We haven't talked about the Lakers in a while, but yes, they will have some interesting moves to be made in this offseason. But I don't know if anybody's seen it yet. Have you seen offseason Luka?
It's medium.
Oh, face slim, arm slim.
Or the medium shirt on.
I think he's down about 20. He's wearing his Laker gear. You know, so you're seeing that everywhere. So it's looking good right now.
It's just funny because I'm like, wait, when did they get eliminated? Like, has it been like 3 weeks or something? Come on.
I think it's been like 2.5 weeks or so. Maybe 3 weeks.
Look, I get that he's like probably on the best like regiment like ever, but like, let's see. Okay, they lost April 30th. So, okay, about a month, I guess, or almost a month. But it's just, I mean, you could do damage if you're like, obviously, like the athletes like they are, and I'm sure it's a pretty crazy regiment. And so it is funny though, but then you see like people like commenting like, oh man, this is like, they show this like every summer with him. Like he like goes and then he comes back and he eats like the American like food, obviously that's like pumped with all these things.
Yeah, it's great when you don't have all these other stuff pumped in your food, but then he comes back in the American diet, and it's like, oh no. But the league should be prepared if we have a slim Luka, in shape Luka next year, and that's going to be a problem. But right now, they're not there, and we don't need to really talk about them because they should be the team playing OKC right now.
Yeah,
that's nonetheless right now because that did not happen. So, I just think OKC is built for this and is built to last. But it is the NBA, and it's harder to obviously keep players based on money and what they deserve, right? So we'll see what happens in the long term. But I thought that was kind of an interesting comparison.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there would be the obvious comparison because they're, as I just mentioned, the teams that have kind of won recently, you could throw Denver in there too. Kind of more like they had some veteran presence, but this is just all mid-20s and under. I think they're the youngest team in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy.
Yep. All right. So wanted to get into a couple things here, but let's get into our Something Happened Today segment. Where we always talk about injuries around the league, and especially obviously in these playoffs. So in Game 3 of the Knicks and Pacers game, we had Aaron Naismith kind of go down with what looked like an ankle sprain. He did come back in the fourth quarter. Didn't kind of look the same. And from what I've seen or what I've heard is he's a big question mark for tomorrow. It's kind of like a game time decision. Has also been noticeably had a pretty significant limp after Game 3. So it will be interesting to see if he can give it a go. But if he does not, what do you think that does to the Pacers?
Hey, I mean, so he was the hero of Game 1, right? Naismith hitting all those threes. So, I mean, look, like one of the things that Indiana has an advantage of over other teams is their depth. And so when a key player goes out, it makes that a little bit more vulnerable. So they're used to having him in the rotation. They're used to him, being like a microwave of sorts where if he gets hot, look out. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's definitely something to monitor. Like you're don't want guys being out of games when you get late into the season, into playoffs. I mean, it can't be a good thing, right? And so I'm sure some guys will step up. They're going to obviously still be at home and, they could still win a ball game without him. But It will be interesting, like if he comes back later in the series, how effective he's going to be, because he's one of their, younger, athletic players that has had a pretty good series so far.
Yeah, he's been obviously instrumental in their wins, right? And obviously we don't, talking about game one, which pretty much fueled the comeback, and that was the only reason they won is because of him hitting threes. Now, if ankle sprains are always tricky. It's one of those things where I would imagine he has pretty significant swelling after the game, because he's probably just playing on adrenaline when he came back in. But as soon as he got to the locker room, he started limping. He had a pretty noticeable limp, and that's when it all kind of sits in, right? You untie your shoe, take off the tape, and then all of a sudden that swelling kind of comes out, right? So over the next 48 hours, they're working on that, trying to get that down, get his pain tolerance down. More than likely, it would be heavily taped or braced up in order to play. But even if he does play, he can be limited. A liability or more limited, right, on defense. And my thing is, if he doesn't play, that's when it's like, because you would like usually Indiana, they seem pretty deep, but like a guy like Benedict Mathurin has been god awful this series, and I don't even know how to like put it, because he averaged 16 points on the season. It's not like we got a guy that was just he averaged 5 points, 6 points, 7 points. I mean, right now, currently, last game he had 2 points. He was 0 for 1. Like, he is just not playing like he should be. Right, the game before that, 0 points. I mean, he's just been nowhere to be found. And if you have a big game like a game 4 with,
so interesting.
The Knicks kind of already came back in game 3, and you have somebody questionable or not going to play, and you don't get anything from him, that makes that game pretty interesting and more in the Knicks' favor.
Yeah, I mean, just looking, he was playing like 30 minutes a game, like in the regular season too. He played 8 minutes. Yeah, I think it was like a game. He may have had a stretch with a pretty good game against Cleveland or Milwaukee. I forget which round that was, but I know he got in a little scuffle there with Hunter from Cleveland, and ever since then he's been kind of a odd man out. And so
that was like at the beginning of the game, towards the beginning of the game, right? He only played 1 minute, right? So he's kicked out of that game. And since then, I mean, if we're going to go to there, right? That game, he had 0 points. Next game, he had 4, then 9, then 0 and 2, right? So it's whatever it is something that's affecting him. And then the Pacers need him in a major way, especially if they're going to be down Naismith.
Yeah, I mean, like Obi Toppin, he's been a nice like role player, but he's not gonna, he's not gonna fill his spot. And so, somebody like Mathurin, we'll probably look at the box score. We'll probably see, him playing maybe 20 to 25 minutes. But we'll see if he can kind of get his his head back in order after that meltdown,
for sure,
against Cleveland. So it does. That injury could loom large for sure.
Yeah,
for Naismith.
And then the only other person I want to get into was Karl-Anthony Towns. During the last couple of minutes of the game, he seemed that he was just flexing his knees, kind of limping, wasn't really running that well. They did not really mention it that much. There wasn't much talk about it. They didn't ask questions about it. So I wouldn't chalk this up as a major thing. I will say, though, that's the same knee that he had meniscus surgery last, I think it was about February, March of 2024. So same knee. Right. Doesn't really mean much because we don't know if anything's really going on there. But he was limping towards the end of the game, kind of finished the game that way. They had to sub him out a couple times on defense. Obviously, there's some liability issues anyways, even if he didn't have the knee. But you can tell that he just wasn't the same. So that's just something to kind of look out for to start the game if you see him kind of limping around or anything like that. But Cat is a hard to read player because when he's running, it doesn't look like he's running. He moves about as slow as possible, kind of like the Joker. And then sometimes he has some explosive movements like that one dunk that he had in game 3. But no real update on that as far as from the Knicks in there.
Yeah, and he seems like one of these players that like gets banged up, and I think in the playoffs he had like a hand injury that we were like, and he was like lipping like I broke it or whatever or I forgot what he lipped, and so or I think I broke it or something. So he's kind of one of these players that gets dinged up out there, and so he's been able to come back strong. Obviously, a real big had a big game 3 as we all know.
For sure. All right, so let's get into the preview of Game 4 between the Knicks and the Pacers. And before we kind of talk about that game, what the hell happened to the Pacers?
What a game.
In Game 3. A 20-point lead. And this is the third time that the Knicks have come back from 20 points in this playoffs, which is completely remarkable. It's as close as what the Pacers have done 3 times this year, where they're won in the last minute, being down 9+ points. So it is. We have 2 teams that have just been doing this comeback stuff, right? So every game has been a comeback. And what do you think of that game?
I was thinking the same thing that you just said. Like, it's impressive what Indiana's done, but almost just as impressive. Not only did they have the Knicks come back down from 20 3 times, but it's been on the road all 3 times.
Yes. Yeah.
And
they are 6-1 on the road now?
6-1 on the road. I thought, second quarter, I think I tweeted like a broom, and as you can see, I don't have the broom anymore like I had last show. I had to get rid of that thing. But I guess it was like a jinx for Indiana fans. But
for sure,
when they were down exactly 20, like in the second quarter, I even thought to myself like, oh well, we got to pull an inner, Boston Celtics game 1 and 2, and they just somehow did it. I mean, they came back. Even they were down 15 late in the third, early in the fourth. So It was like they were kind of chipping away, but then Indiana brought the lead back up. But Cat, right? Karl Anthony Towns, we talked about last game how you need him in there in the fourth. We look like the smartest guys in the room now, but that's what could happen is you can have a guy go off who's uber talented offensively.
Yeah. 20 points in the fourth quarter. Right? I think he had he had 4 points going into the quarter because he ended up with 24. So obviously he had a huge fourth quarter. And one thing I wanted to say, like, Indiana in the first half was just playing defensively out of their mind. And the Knicks were making mental mistakes. They just didn't look like they really wanted to be there, especially already down 2-0. They mentally looked drained. In that fourth quarter, there are times where the Knicks can play like the best defense, right? They were swarming every pass. Like, as soon as the pass got there, some defender was there. OG, Mikal Bridges. And this is how they come back in these games. Right. And if it wasn't for that swarming defense, there's no way they would even stood a chance in coming back in this game. And one thing I wanted to say is I think Tibbs finally understood the assignment and played some guys, obviously, that were questionable, but they don't have anybody else to play. Played Dorian Wright and Shamet. But the main reason why he played them is because they needed fresh legs in the fourth quarter. And if you don't have fresh legs against this Indiana team, just like we're seeing with OKC, they're young, they're fresh, they get up and down the court as fast as possible. You're not going to stand a chance. And Tibbs made that move, and you kind of got to tip your hat and say, all right, you had to play somebody on your bench. And he also went to a different starting lineup, right, which was good and bad. I think that at first Josh Hart seemed a little perturbed by it, but once he got his footing in it, and he still played 35 minutes in that game, right? So he was hell instrumental in the fourth quarter, and Mitchell Robinson was huge on defense throughout the game. And those were the 2 kind of big moves that I thought Tibbs made, and he pushed all the right buttons in this game.
Yeah, I mean, look at the final score, right? 106-100. We talked about how the Knicks will be comfortable if it's a high 90s, low hundreds games. And the games that were 110 plus, 120 plus, Indiana won those. And so, you hit the nail on the head. what a time to tweak, like kind of tweak lineups and like play certain lineups that have never played together all season long. But the fourth quarter, I think Tibbs knows that his team was tired, most likely, right? Or else why would he have done it? He saw that the pace Indiana goes at, sure, we can hang with them for a while, but we need to have the endurance to get through 48 minutes. And if we can buy, 8 to 12 minutes with some of these guys, and hopefully they could be somewhat productive. Obviously Indiana built the lead and whatnot, but I mean, that was again, like you said, tip your hat off, because that was ultimately was like the best decision for them, because wouldn't you know, New York was a team that was the freshest in the fourth quarter, and which led them to the victory, and obviously with Karl Anthony Towns as well.
Not one player played over 40 minutes in that game, and the highest was 37 for the Knicks, right? So that was huge,
out of the norm for sure.
We know what Tibbs does to his players, and I think finally, whoever said it, whoever talked to him, talked some sense in him, allowed him to open up his rotation, which I think played dividends. It kind of was a little thrown off in the first half. I think that's why they went down, because they weren't used. They've never even played that lineup before, right? They had 5 people on the court that had never been there. But overall, it paid off in the second half when they had fresh legs. So
go ahead.
Yeah,
no, sorry. Just what I was going to say was, I mean, I know part of it was because of the foul trouble too, and Brunson got his 4th foul in the second quarter. I mean, you can't leave him out there. That could have been devastating. But sorry, go ahead.
For sure. I mean, the 4 fouls on Brunson and 3 fouls on Cat, right? Obviously, that played into the minutes, but I think in a way that was probably like one of those negatives that become a positive. And it was huge in the third and fourth quarter, because there was a stretch where Brunson wasn't able to play because he picked up he picked up a 5th foul, right? So there's a stretch where he just wasn't able to play for a while, and that's when Cat went on his run and just kind of dominated the fourth quarter. Now, my question for you is, how do the Knicks win Game 4? Like, what's the game plan, and what are you looking for in this game?
So just more playing Knicks basketball. I think so no lead is safe. So I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, they can't be down and like they're not going to come back, because they sure might do that. But when they started finally kind of getting to Boston is when they would have hotter starts, and I think it's going to be similar to tomorrow's game, because look, like they obviously lost their 2 at home. They had to win Game 3. Indiana win Game 4, and then their goal, Indiana, was so of course sweep, but probably just get 1 game. And so this one is huge. I mean, I'm assuming they'll go with the same starting lineup as Game 3. I don't know. I thought it was a little bit interesting having the 2 big guys in there. Obviously, he helps defensively, and I think that's what they're going to go with. I think they're sold on, we cannot have a game where it's 120 plus. Like, we need to slow these guys down. If we have a couple big guys in there, slow the pace. I think that's what they're going to continue to do, and then obviously pick their spots on offense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. If you hold a Pacers team to 100 points, that's like as good as it gets, right? And in the last 2 games, I mean, let's see, the first game they had 138. Obviously, that was out of extreme, where they go to overtime, all that stuff. Then they had 114, and then now they had 100, right? Yeah. So you keep in that, I would say, that 100 to 110 range, you have a great chance in the game. And I think this monster lineup, or the 2 big lineup, I think is going to be here to stay. Just because they need that defensive presence, and I think they needed a spark off the bench. And Mitchell Robinson gives them a different type of spark based on defense, but I think Josh Hart can kind of give him some offense. He gets rebounds, he gets assists, right? So he gives you more of a play. He gives you more of a playmaker off the bench versus just a defensive big guy off the bench. And I think that's going to be something that they need moving forward in this series. And if they can win Game 4 and kind of go deeper in this series, that'll be huge dividends if you have McBride and Hart kind of coming off the bench, providing what they provide.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting if Tibbs still trusts the same thing he did in Game 3. I think he just probably felt like there was nothing to lose, and like, hey, let's play some of these guys, see if we can get lightning in a bottle. So that's what I'll be looking for. Yeah. If he can stick to let's get our main guys 40 or less minutes. I don't know if that's going to happen. It just depends on how the game is going and whatnot, and foul trouble, as we mentioned. So that's what I'll be looking for, because I do think he's going to have a similar game plan where you got to buy about 5-10 minutes, and it doesn't have to be all at one time, of course.
For sure,
it could be a few minutes in the first half, a couple minutes in the third, and then it's go time in the fourth. And so that's kind of something I'll be looking at for.
Yeah, and you got to have guys that stay ready, and those are some NBA veterans that came into the game. These are guys that have been here. They have played in the NBA for a long time, and they were professionals when they came into this game. And Shaman hit a three. There's a big three that he hit, and there's certain times where you just need something out of those guys, and they were there for it. So I think they're at least here to stay for the next game, because you got to at least play 8-9 deep against this Indiana fresh leg team. So
yep, they got to get it. From a Knicks standpoint, hey, it'd be pretty crazy if both road teams win each game, because then it just all of a sudden that it's still kind of teetering towards Indiana, and if Knicks win, it's kind of goes back to New York. I mean, I don't think Indiana is going to be scared about going into Madison Square Garden and winning a game 5 or 7. But yeah, I think if Knicks win tomorrow, it'll solidify it going 7. If they lose, we'll see. But might be a 6-game series. So obviously huge game tomorrow, and I'm excited to watch it.
Don't lose, Indiana. Don't lose.
Ooh.
Just don't lose that momentum. Play like this is your game. I say this about every Game 4. I think I've said this almost every time.
They're big.
Play like it's your Game 7, because you don't want to lose back-to-back games, because it's the same thing the Knicks are going through. You just lost a 20-point lead. Game 1, mentally, going into Game 2 was a tough one for the Knicks. Absolutely. This is going to be a tough one for a young Indiana team, because mentally, are they strong enough to put the foot on the pedal and put that gas all the way up? Are they, or are they not? Right. And if they're not, the Knicks are going to snatch that and go back to the Garden 2-2. And I think that's a dangerous time for Indiana if that happens.
Yeah, it's very difficult to win the first 2 games on the road. And so it would all be for naught if they lose Game 4, because it's they basically it's still 2-2 and they still have a chance, obviously, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think I mentioned it again in Knicks and Boston. So if you win those first 2 road games, you kind of earn the right to just win one of the 2 going into Game 3 or 4, and that's really all you need to get a stranglehold of the series. And so, but yeah, don't lose that, because if you lose that, we know what the Madison Square Garden is going to be like in Game 5, and it's going to be a madhouse. And so, but yeah, I'm hoping for a 7-game series. So I think Knicks will have to win for that to happen.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's hard to say, oh, what do the Pacers need to do different in Game 4? And it's really just do what they did in the first half and don't lose a 20-point lead. So keep the gas on, right? Don't give up. Don't give them any hope. No slimmer of a chance that they're going to come back, right? Because as soon as you do that, they got superstars like Cat and Jalen Brunson that will take over a game. And I think that's one of the differences between the 2 teams, is I think a guy like Brunson or a Cat can just take over a quarter. And at times, I think Tyrese can possibly be that. Yes, he had a big shot, but that was more Aaron Naismith that took over that game. And I don't think Aaron Naismith is doing that any much more, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I can rely on Aaron Naismith to score 20 points in a quarter.
Well, definitely not from the sidelines. That's for sure.
That's what I'm saying, right? So, and then who is that player for them, right? Siakam? Yeah, he had a big game too, but I don't know if he's consistently that player to kind of take over a game like that. And those boys in New York have those two guys. And so that's what always keeps them in a series and super competitive. So Pacers, keep them moving, keep those young legs fresh, and keep going towards the victory for them.
Look, yeah, both teams are going to be, if they're no lead is going to feel safe. Let's just say that. Yeah. And so until that final horn goes off, that's when one of those teams will be able to, have a sigh of relief. But yeah, good point on where the Knicks have like these guys that can really take over a game versus Indiana. It's a little bit more of a team effort. And so without Naismith, make it even a little bit harder. But let's see what happens tomorrow night.
Yep. All right. So we got to a lot of topics tonight, and we're going to have a big game for tomorrow to talk about. So we'll be on tomorrow. But Eric, any last kind of comments, words on tonight or anything?
No, looking forward to this week, kind of getting back to the regularly scheduled program. Just we hope some of these series extend a little bit so we can jump on a little bit more. And I'm glad we didn't see any sweeps. That's like no fun. And I know tomorrow we'll have that reaction of Game 4. Yep. And then, of course, we'll preview Game 5 on the Western Conference.
Yes, sir. All right. Sounds good. And as always, everybody, we will be uploading the pod so you can catch the audio on there. But until tomorrow, the Hoops Rehab team is out. Peace out, guys.
Peace.